Sarah Martinez had always been different. Growing up in a small Texas town, she spent her weekends fixing cars with her father instead of shopping with friends. At 25, she worked as a physical therapist at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego, helping injured soldiers recover from their wounds. Her patients respected her dedication, but they had no idea what she was truly capable of. The gymnasium at the naval base was buzzing with excitement that Tuesday morning. A group of Navy SEALs had gathered for their monthly fitness assessment, and word had spread throughout the facility. These elite warriors were known for their incredible physical abilities, and watching them train was always impressive. Sarah was walking past the gym when she heard the commotion inside. Commander Jake Thompson was explaining the challenge to his team. They would be attempting to break the base record for consecutive pull-ups, which currently stood at 87. The previous record holder had been a SEAL who had since retired, and the current team was determined to surpass it. One by one, the muscular men stepped up to the bar, their faces showing intense concentration. Sarah paused at the doorway, watching as each SEAL gave their best effort. The first managed 43 pull-ups before his arms gave out. The second reached 51. The third, a particularly large man named Rodriguez, made it to 62 before dropping to the ground, breathing heavily. The team cheered for each attempt, but none came close to the record. As she observed their technique, Sarah noticed several inefficiencies in their form. Her background in physical therapy had taught her about muscle mechanics and energy conservation during exercise. She could see exactly where each man was wasting energy and how they could improve their performance.
Without thinking, she stepped into the gymnasium. The conversation stopped as 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Sarah was petite, standing just 5'4" tall and weighing barely 120 pounds in her scrubs, with her long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked nothing like someone who belonged in a room full of elite military athletes. Commander Thompson raised an eyebrow as she approached. He had seen Sarah around the medical center and knew she was respected in her field, but this was unexpected. The other SEALs exchanged glances, some smiling with amusement at the interruption. Sarah cleared her throat, suddenly aware of how quiet the room had become. Her heart was racing, but she forced herself to speak clearly. She explained that she had been watching their attempts and noticed some technical issues that might be preventing them from reaching their full potential. The room remained silent as she described the biomechanics of pull-ups and how proper form could dramatically increase endurance. Rodriguez wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. He asked Sarah if she thought she could do better, his tone friendly but clearly skeptical. The question hung in the air as the other SEALs chuckled softly. They were not being mean-spirited, but the idea of someone half their size outperforming them seemed impossible. Sarah felt her cheeks flush, but she did not back down. She had always been competitive, a trait that had served her well throughout her career. In college, she had been a gymnast and rock climber, activities that had given her exceptional upper body strength relative to her size. She had also continued training privately, maintaining her fitness even as she focused on her medical career. The laughter in the room was not cruel, but it was clear that none of the SEALs took her suggestions seriously. Commander Thompson, however, was intrigued. He had learned during his military career never to underestimate anyone based on appearances. He had seen small soldiers outperform much larger ones in various situations. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of these elite warriors. Some were still smiling, others looked curious, and a few seemed genuinely interested in what she might accomplish. She knew this was a moment that could change everything. She could walk away and continue her normal routine, or she could step up and prove that strength came in many different forms. The pull-up bar hung in the center of the room, still swaying slightly from Rodriguez's attempt. Sarah calculated the distance, visualized her approach, and made her decision. She asked Commander Thompson if she could attempt the challenge, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. The commander studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. He explained the rules. She would need to achieve full extension on each repetition with her chin clearing the bar completely. There would be no time limit, but she could not rest between repetitions or touch the ground until she was finished.
As Sarah stepped toward the bar, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The casual laughter faded, replaced by genuine curiosity and anticipation. These men had dedicated their lives to physical excellence, and they recognized determination when they saw it. Whatever happened next, they would witness something memorable. Sarah removed her white medical coat and rolled up the sleeves of her scrubs. The fabric was not ideal for athletic performance, but she had no choice. She had not planned on doing pull-ups that morning, but here she was, about to attempt something that would either prove her point or embarrass her completely. Sarah steps her sneaker into his hands to reach the bar. Rodriguez looks curiously supportive. High detail on the contrast between his large hands and her small frame. Commander Thompson called for silence as Sarah approached the bar. The gymnasium, which moments before had been filled with conversation and laughter, became as quiet as a library. 20 elite soldiers watched as the small physical therapist reached up toward the metal bar that hung 8 feet above the ground. Sarah was too short to reach the bar from the ground, so Rodriguez stepped forward to offer assistance. His earlier skepticism had been replaced by genuine curiosity, and he positioned himself to give her a boost. As his large hands formed a step for her foot, he whispered words of encouragement, telling her to show them what she could do. With Rodriguez's help, Sarah grasped the bar with both hands. Her grip was different from what the SEALs had used. Instead of the wide, powerful grip favored by most men, she positioned her hands shoulder-width apart, a technique she had learned from years of rock climbing. This grip would allow her to engage different muscle groups and conserve energy more effectively. As she hung from the bar, Sarah felt the familiar sensation of her body weight pulling downward. Her arms, though much smaller than those of the men around her, were dense with muscle developed through years of climbing and gymnastics. More importantly, her technique was flawless, refined through countless hours of practice in her private gym at home. The room remained silent as Sarah closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. She had learned meditation techniques during her physical therapy training, methods designed to help patients manage pain and stress. Now she used these same techniques to calm her mind and prepare her body for the challenge ahead. Rodriguez stepped back, giving her space to begin. Commander Thompson looked at his watch and announced that the attempt was officially starting. Every eye in the room was focused on the small woman hanging from the pull-up bar, her feet several inches off the ground. Sarah began her first repetition slowly and deliberately. Unlike the explosive movements she had witnessed from the SEALs, her motion was smooth and controlled. She pulled herself upward until her chin cleared the bar, then lowered herself with the same careful precision. The entire movement took nearly 3 seconds, much longer than the rapid-fire attempts she had observed earlier. The first 10 repetitions were easy, almost effortless. Sarah's breathing remained steady and her form stayed perfect. The SEALs watched in growing amazement as she continued, each pull-up identical to the last. There was no wasted motion, no swinging or kicking, just pure mechanical efficiency. By the 20th repetition, some of the SEALs began to murmur among themselves. They had expected her to struggle after just a few attempts, but she showed no signs of fatigue. Her pace remained constant, her breathing controlled, and her form flawless. Rodriguez shook his head in disbelief, remembering how difficult his own attempt had been. At 30 pull-ups, the murmuring stopped completely. Every person in the room realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Commander Thompson found himself leaning forward, studying Sarah's technique with professional interest. He had been a SEAL for 15 years and had never seen anyone make pull-ups look so effortless. Sarah's mind was completely focused on the rhythm of her movement. She counted each repetition silently, but more importantly, she monitored her body's response to the exercise. Her training and physical therapy had taught her to recognize the early signs of muscle fatigue, and she adjusted her technique accordingly. As she passed 40 repetitions, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. She had already exceeded the performance of most of the SEALs, but she was just getting started. Her arms felt strong, her grip remained secure, and her breathing was still under control. The months of private training were paying off exactly as she had hoped. The SEALs no longer looked amused or skeptical. Their expressions had changed to ones of respect and amazement. They recognized athletic excellence when they saw it, regardless of its source. Rodriguez found himself counting along silently, rooting for Sarah to continue her incredible performance. At 50 pull-ups, Sarah's pace remained unchanged. Her shoulders burned slightly, but the sensation was manageable. She had experienced much worse during her rock climbing adventures when she would hang from cliff faces for hours at a time. This was just another challenge to overcome, another limit to push past. Commander Thompson glanced around the room at his men. These were some of the most physically capable individuals in the world, and they were watching a physical therapist outperform all of them with apparent ease. He made a mental note to learn more about her training methods and background.
The 60th repetition came and went without any change in Sarah's form or pace. By now, she had surpassed Rodriguez's best effort, and she showed no signs of slowing down. The room remained absolutely silent, except for the soft sound of her controlled breathing and the slight creaking of the pull-up bar. As Sarah approached 70 pull-ups, she allowed her mind to wander briefly to her childhood. She remembered her father teaching her that size and strength were not the same thing, that technique and determination could overcome almost any physical disadvantage. Those lessons had shaped her entire approach to fitness in life, and they were serving her well in this moment. At 75 pull-ups, something remarkable happened in the gymnasium. The SEALs, who had initially been quiet observers, began to offer words of encouragement. Rodriguez started counting aloud, his voice carrying across the silent room. Other team members joined in, creating a rhythmic chant that matched Sarah's steady pace. Sarah could hear their support, and it gave her an unexpected boost of energy. She had come into this challenge expecting skepticism and doubt, but instead found herself surrounded by warriors who respected excellence regardless of its source. The counting continued as she reached 80 pull-ups, then 85. At 86 repetitions, Sarah was one away from tying the base record. The room held its collective breath as she lowered herself from the bar and prepared for what could be the record-tying pull-up. Her shoulders were burning now, and her forearms ached from maintaining her grip, but her determination remained unshaken. The 87th pull-up was slower than the previous ones, but her form remained perfect. As her chin cleared the bar, the room erupted in cheers. She had tied the record that had stood unchallenged for 3 years. But Sarah was not finished yet. Commander Thompson called out the count as Sarah continued. 88, 89, 90. Each repetition was now a new base record, and the SEALs were witnessing history in the making. Some of them had taken out their phones to record the incredible achievement, knowing that no one would believe what they were seeing without proof.
Sarah's breathing was heavier now, but still controlled. She had entered what athletes call the zone, a state of complete focus where pain becomes secondary to performance. Her mind was clear, her purpose absolute. She would continue until her body absolutely refused to go further. At 100 pull-ups, the cheering became deafening. Sarah had not only broken the base record, but had shattered it completely. The SEALs were jumping up and down, slapping each other on the back and shouting encouragement. They had never seen anything like this before, and they knew they probably never would again. Rodriguez was shaking his head in amazement, a huge grin on his face. Just an hour earlier, he had been proud of his 62 pull-ups. Now he was watching someone nearly half his size make that number look like a warm-up exercise. His respect for Sarah had grown with every repetition. Sarah's arms were screaming in protest, but she pushed the pain to the back of her mind. She had learned pain management techniques during her medical training, methods designed to help patients cope with rehabilitation exercises. Now she used those same techniques on herself, compartmentalizing the discomfort and focusing on the task at hand. At 110 pull-ups, Sarah's pace finally began to slow slightly. Each repetition was taking a few seconds longer than before, and her breathing had become more labored. But her form remained textbook perfect, a testament to years of disciplined training and natural athletic ability. The SEALs had stopped cheering and were now watching in reverent silence. They understood that they were witnessing something truly special, a performance that would be talked about for years to come. Commander Thompson found himself taking mental notes, already planning to incorporate Sarah's techniques into his team's training program. Sarah's mind drifted to her patients at the medical center. She thought about the injured soldiers who fought every day to regain their strength and mobility, who pushed through pain and frustration to achieve their goals. Their courage and determination had inspired her own training, and she was drawing on their example. Now, at 120 pull-ups, Sarah's grip began to feel uncertain for the first time. Her hands were cramping and sweat was making the bar slippery. She adjusted her grip carefully, using a technique she had learned from rock climbing to maintain her hold on the metal surface. The room remained absolutely silent, except for Sarah's controlled breathing and the rhythmic counting from Rodriguez. Every person present understood that they were witnessing something that might never be repeated. This was not just about breaking a record, it was about redefining what was possible. Sarah's shoulders were on fire and her arms felt like lead weights, but she continued, driven by a combination of personal pride and the desire to prove that strength came in many forms. She had spent her entire life being underestimated because of her size, and this was her moment to show what she was truly capable of. At 125 pull-ups, Sarah's pace slowed even further. Each movement required tremendous effort, and she could feel her muscles beginning to shake with fatigue. But her mind remained focused, her technique still precise, and her determination unbroken. Commander Thompson looked around the room at his elite team. These men had completed some of the most challenging military training in the world, had faced danger in combat zones, and prided themselves on their physical capabilities. Yet they were all watching in awe as a small physical therapist redefined their understanding of human potential. The count continued to climb, 126, 127, 128. Each number represented a new personal best for Sarah, a new milestone in an already extraordinary performance. The SEALs had forgotten their own attempts entirely, completely absorbed in watching history unfold before their eyes. At 130 pull-ups, Sarah's body was screaming for relief. Every muscle fiber in her arms and back was saturated with lactic acid, creating a burning sensation that threatened to overwhelm her focus. Her hands were cramping so severely that she had to constantly readjust her grip on the bar, and sweat was running down her face despite the air conditioning in the gymnasium. But Sarah's mind remained clear and determined. She had entered a state that few athletes ever experience, where the body continues to function despite being pushed far beyond its normal limits. Her years of medical training had taught her about the physiological processes occurring in her muscles, and she used that knowledge to manage the pain and fatigue. The SEALs were no longer making any sound at all. They stood in complete silence, watching as this small woman continued to defy everything they thought they knew about human performance. Rodriguez had his phone out, recording every moment of what was clearly going to become legendary footage within the military community.
At 135 pull-ups, Sarah's pace had slowed to 1 repetition every 8 seconds. Her form, which had been perfect for over 2 hours, began to show slight variations as her exhausted muscles struggled to maintain their precise coordination. But she compensated by adjusting her technique, using her extensive knowledge of biomechanics to find new ways to distribute the load across her body. Commander Thompson found himself studying every aspect of Sarah's performance with professional fascination. He had spent decades in the military working with some of the most elite athletes in the world, but he had never seen anyone demonstrate this level of mental toughness combined with technical perfection. He was already planning to invite Sarah to work with his team as a consultant. Sarah's breathing had become labored, but it remained controlled and rhythmic. She used a technique borrowed from her meditation practice, timing each breath to match her movements and using the oxygen intake to maintain her focus. The pain in her shoulders was now constant and intense, but she had learned to accept it as simply another piece of information rather than an obstacle to overcome. At 140 pull-ups, something extraordinary happened. Sarah's body, pushed to its absolute limits, began to adapt in real time. Her nervous system found new pathways to recruit muscle fibers, and her cardiovascular system adjusted to deliver oxygen more efficiently to her working muscles. She was experiencing what exercise physiologists call supercompensation, where the body temporarily exceeds its normal capabilities under extreme stress. The count continued to climb, each number representing another small victory over physical limitation. 141, 142, 143. The SEALs had given up any pretense of casual observation and were now completely absorbed in witnessing what might be the most remarkable athletic performance any of them had ever seen. Rodriguez whispered to the man next to him, expressing amazement at Sarah's grip strength. As someone who prided himself on his own physical capabilities, he understood exactly how difficult it was to maintain a secure hold on the bar after so many repetitions. His own hands had given out long before his arms reached failure, yet Sarah's grip remained solid despite the obvious fatigue in her other muscle groups. At 145 pull-ups, Sarah's mind began to wander slightly as her body worked on autopilot. She thought about her journey to this moment, remembering the countless hours spent training in her home gym, the rock climbing expeditions that had built her incredible strength-to-weight ratio, and the patients who had taught her about perseverance through adversity. The gymnasium felt different now than it had when she first walked in. The initial atmosphere of skepticism and amusement had been completely replaced by respect and wonder. These elite warriors had accepted her as one of their own, recognizing that true strength transcended physical appearance and could be found in the most unexpected places. Sarah's shoulders felt like they were being stabbed with hot needles, and her forearms were cramping so severely that she could barely feel her fingers, but her core remained solid. Her technique stayed consistent, and her mental focus never wavered. She had discovered reserves of strength that she had not known existed, tapping into a level of performance that surprised even her. At 150 pull-ups, the room remained absolutely silent, except for Sarah's breathing and the soft creaking of the pull-up bar. The SEALs stood motionless, afraid that any movement or sound might somehow disturb the incredible performance they were witnessing. They understood that they were seeing something that would be talked about for decades to come. Commander Thompson checked his watch, realizing that Sarah had been hanging from the bar for nearly 3 hours. Her endurance was as impressive as her strength, demonstrating a level of conditioning that rivaled anything he had seen in his military career. He made a mental note to learn everything he could about her training methods and background. The count reached 155, then 160. Each repetition was now a monumental effort, requiring Sarah to summon every bit of willpower and physical capability she possessed. Her face showed the strain she was under, but her eyes remained focused and determined. She had come too far to give up now, regardless of how much her body was protesting.
At 165 pull-ups, Sarah entered a realm that few human beings ever experience. Her body was operating on pure willpower, having exhausted every normal source of energy and strength. Yet somehow, she continued to move with mechanical precision, each repetition a testament to the incredible power of human determination. The SEALs had abandoned any attempt to maintain their military composure. Several were openly staring with their mouths agape, while others were quietly shaking their heads in disbelief. Rodriguez had stopped counting aloud, too amazed to speak. The only sound in the room was Sarah's controlled breathing and the rhythmic creaking of the pull-up bar. Sarah's grip had become her greatest challenge. Her hands were so cramped that she could barely feel her fingers, and the bar felt like it was trying to slip from her grasp with every repetition. She had wrapped her thumbs around the bar in a technique called a hook grip, something she had learned from powerlifting to maintain her hold despite the weakness in her hands. At 170 pull-ups, Sarah's mind began to play tricks on her.
The pain had become so intense that her brain started to disconnect from her body as a protective mechanism. She found herself counting repetitions twice, losing track of where she was in the sequence. But her body continued to function, moving through the familiar pattern, even as her consciousness began to fade in and out. Commander Thompson realized he was witnessing something that transcended normal athletic performance. This was about more than strength or endurance. It was about the human spirit's ability to overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. He had seen soldiers perform incredible feats under combat stress, but this was different. This was a choice to push beyond every conceivable limit without any external pressure or threat. The other medical staff at the facility had heard about what was happening in the gymnasium, and a small crowd had gathered at the doorways. Nurses, doctors, and technicians peered into the room, drawn by reports of the incredible performance taking place. Word was spreading throughout the entire naval base about the physical therapist who was rewriting the record books. At 175 pull-ups, Sarah's form finally began to break down significantly. Her movements became slightly jerky, and she had to fight to keep her legs from swinging. But she compensated by slowing down even further, taking nearly 15 seconds per repetition to ensure that each one met the standards. Her perfectionist nature would not allow her to compromise her technique, even in the face of complete physical exhaustion. Rodriguez found his voice again and began counting softly, wanting to help Sarah keep track of her progress. 176, 177, 178. Each number felt like a small miracle, representing another impossible achievement. In an already legendary performance, Sarah's vision began to blur slightly as her body redirected blood flow away from non-essential functions to keep her working muscles supplied with oxygen. She had learned about this phenomenon during her medical training, understanding that it was a normal response to extreme physical stress. She used this knowledge to stay calm and focused, knowing that her body was simply doing what it needed to do to continue functioning. The pain in her shoulders had evolved beyond simple muscle fatigue into something that felt like her joints were being pulled apart. Her rotator cuffs, the small muscles that stabilized the shoulder joint, were screaming in protest. But years of climbing had taught her to work through this type of discomfort, and she drew on that experience. Now, at 180 pull-ups, Sarah made a conscious decision to attempt to reach an even more significant milestone. In her mind, she began targeting 200 repetitions, a number that seemed impossible even by the standards she had already set. It was an arbitrary goal, but it gave her something concrete to focus on during the remaining attempts.
The SEALs had organized themselves into a supportive formation around the pull-up area, creating a semicircle that blocked the view from the growing crowd of onlookers. They had instinctively moved to protect Sarah's privacy during this extraordinary effort, recognizing that she deserved to complete her attempt without additional distractions. Sarah's hands were now completely numb, and she was relying entirely on the mechanical grip strength she had developed through years of training. Her forearms felt like concrete blocks, solid and unmoving. She had to consciously command each finger to maintain its position on the bar as her nervous system was beginning to shut down non-essential motor functions. At 185 pull-ups, Sarah's breathing became more ragged despite her best efforts to control it. Her cardiovascular system was working at maximum capacity, trying to deliver oxygen to muscles that were operating in severe oxygen debt. But her heart rate remained surprisingly stable, a testament to the incredible conditioning she had built through years of endurance training. Commander Thompson glanced at his men, seeing expressions of awe and respect that he had rarely witnessed in his career. These elite soldiers had been humbled in the best possible way, learning that excellence could be found in the most unexpected places and that their own understanding of human potential had been far too limited. The count continued to climb toward the impossible goal Sarah had set for herself. 186, 187, 188.
Each repetition was now taking close to 20 seconds as Sarah fought not just against gravity and fatigue, but against her own body's increasingly desperate attempts to force her to stop. At 190 pull-ups, Sarah's body was operating in a state that medical professionals would later describe as physiologically impossible. Every muscle fiber was saturated with fatigue toxins, her nervous system was shutting down non-essential functions, and her cardiovascular system was working at levels that should have forced her to stop hours earlier, yet somehow she continued to move with deliberate precision. The gymnasium had become a sacred space. The SEALs stood in complete silence, their earlier amazement having evolved into something closer to reverence. They were witnessing a demonstration of human willpower that challenged everything they thought they knew about physical limitations. Rodriguez wiped tears from his eyes, completely overcome by the extraordinary performance he was watching. Sarah's mind had entered an almost meditative state. The pain had become so overwhelming that her brain had essentially stopped processing it as relevant information. Instead, she focused on the simple mechanics of the movement. Grip the bar, engage the lats, pull up, lower down, repeat. Each cycle became a meditation on the essential nature of human determination. Commander Thompson had quietly called the base commander, knowing that what was happening needed to be officially documented. This was not just a remarkable athletic performance, it was a redefinition of what was considered humanly possible. The implications for military training and human performance research were staggering. At 195 pull-ups, Sarah's grip finally began to fail in a meaningful way. Her left hand started to slip during the lowering phase of each repetition, forcing her to readjust her position constantly. She could feel her fingers losing their ability to maintain their curl around the bar, but she compensated by using her thumb in a way that created additional mechanical advantage. The crowd outside the gymnasium had grown significantly, but the SEALs continued to maintain their protective formation around Sarah. They understood instinctively that this moment belonged to her, and that their role was simply to witness and support an achievement that would become part of military legend. Sarah's breathing had become completely erratic, with her body desperately trying to process the massive oxygen debt she had accumulated. But her heart rate remained remarkably stable, indicating that her cardiovascular conditioning was still holding up despite the impossible demands being placed on her system. Her years of endurance training were paying dividends in ways she had never imagined. At 198 pull-ups, Sarah allowed herself to acknowledge how close she was to her impossible goal of 200. The number had seemed like a fantasy when she first conceived it, but now it was within reach. 2 more repetitions would give her a round number that would be easy to remember and would represent the achievement that might never be equaled. Rodriguez found his voice again, softly counting the final repetitions. 199, he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. Every person in the room understood that they were about to witness the conclusion of one of the most remarkable athletic performances in history. Sarah's 199th pull-up was the slowest yet, taking nearly 30 seconds from start to finish. Her form was still technically correct, but her movements had become almost robotic as her nervous system struggled to coordinate the complex muscle activations required for each repetition. Her face showed the strain she was under, but her eyes remained focused and determined as she lowered herself from the bar after the 199th repetition. Sarah hung motionless for nearly 20 seconds. Her arms were shaking uncontrollably, and her grip felt like it might give out at any moment. The room held its collective breath as everyone waited to see if she would attempt the final pull-up that would give her an even 200. Commander Thompson stepped closer, ready to catch her if she fell. He had seen enough extreme physical performances to recognize the signs of complete muscular failure, and Sarah was displaying all of them. Yet somehow she was still hanging from the bar, still fighting to complete her self-imposed challenge. The base commander had arrived and was standing quietly at the back of the room, having been briefed on what was happening.
He understood that he was witnessing something that would become part of naval history, a performance that would be discussed in leadership courses and used as an example of human potential for decades to come. Sarah closed her eyes and summoned every bit of willpower she possessed. Her body was screaming at her to stop. Every rational part of her mind was telling her that she had already achieved more than anyone could have expected. But deep inside, she knew she had one more pull-up left. She had come too far to stop at 199. The final pull-up began almost imperceptibly. Sarah's movement was so slow that it was initially unclear whether she was attempting another repetition or simply adjusting her grip. But gradually, inexorably, she began to rise toward the bar. Her face contorted with effort, her entire body trembling with the strain, but she continued to climb. 20 seconds into the final repetition, Sarah's chin was still below the level of the bar. Her arms were shaking so violently that the pull-up bar itself was moving, creating a rhythmic creaking sound that echoed through the silent gymnasium. Every person watching understood that they were seeing the absolute limits of human endurance being tested in real time. At 25 seconds, Sarah's chin reached the level of the bar. According to the rules, this would constitute a successful repetition, but she was not finished. With one final monumental effort, she pulled herself high enough that her chin cleared the bar completely, fulfilling the requirement for her 200th pull-up. As Sarah completed her 200th pull-up, the gymnasium erupted in the loudest cheering that the naval base had ever heard. 20 Navy SEALs, men who had been trained to maintain composure under the most extreme circumstances, were jumping up and down like children at a birthday party. Rodriguez was shouting at the top of his lungs, and Commander Thompson was applauding so vigorously that his hands were turning red. Sarah hung from the bar for a moment after completing the final repetition, her body swaying slightly as she tried to process what she had just accomplished. 200 pull-ups. The number seemed impossible even to her, despite having just lived through every agonizing repetition. Her arms felt completely dead, and her hands were so cramped that she was not sure she would be able to let go of the bar. Rodriguez and 2 other SEALs stepped forward to help Sarah down from the bar. Her grip had locked in place due to severe cramping, and they had to gently pry her fingers open while supporting her weight. When her feet finally touched the ground, her legs immediately gave out, and she would have collapsed if not for the strong arms supporting her. The base commander stepped forward, his face showing a mixture of amazement and respect that Sarah had never seen from such a high-ranking officer. He extended his hand to congratulate her, but then seemed to reconsider and instead offered a smart military salute. The gesture was echoed by every SEAL in the room, creating a moment of profound respect and recognition. Word of Sarah's achievements spread through the naval base like wildfire. Within an hour, her phone was ringing constantly with calls from reporters, military officials, and fitness experts who wanted to understand how such an incredible performance had been possible. The video that Rodriguez had recorded was already being shared across social media platforms, where it quickly went viral. Sarah spent the next several hours in the medical center, where her colleagues examined her for signs of serious injury. Remarkably, despite the extreme nature of her performance, she had suffered no significant damage. Her muscles were severely fatigued and would require several days to recover, but her technique had been so perfect that she had avoided the joint and tendon injuries that might have been expected. The story of Sarah's achievement made national news within 24 hours. Sports networks ran segments analyzing her technique and trying to understand the physiological factors that had made such a performance possible. Exercise physiologists lined up to study her training methods, and several universities offered to fund research into her unique combination of strength, endurance, and mental toughness. Commander Thompson immediately invited Sarah to become a consultant for his SEAL team's physical training program. Her demonstration had shown him that there were aspects of human performance that his elite warriors had not yet explored, and he wanted to learn everything she could teach them about technique, mental preparation, and the science of pushing beyond apparent limitations. Rodriguez became one of Sarah's biggest advocates within the military community. He shared her story whenever he had the opportunity, emphasizing not just the remarkable number of pull-ups she had completed, but the way she had approached the challenge with scientific precision and unbreakable determination. His respect for her had grown into genuine admiration. The original base record of 87 pull-ups was officially retired, with Sarah's new record of 200 being established as the new standard. A plaque was installed in the gymnasium commemorating her achievement with an inscription that read, "On this day, Sarah Martinez redefined the possible." The plaque also included her simple question that had started everything: "Would you mind if I tried?" Sarah returned to her work as a physical therapist, but her approach to helping patients had been fundamentally changed by her experience. She now understood on a visceral level what the human body was capable of achieving when proper technique was combined with unwavering determination. Her patients benefited from this new understanding, achieving faster and more complete recoveries under her guidance. The SEALs who had witnessed her performance were forever changed by the experience. They had learned that excellence could come from unexpected sources, that size and appearance were poor indicators of capability, and that the human spirit could overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. These lessons influenced their approach to training, leadership, and life.
Sarah's achievement was eventually documented in the Guinness Book of World Records, where it stood alone in a category that no one else seemed willing to challenge. Sports scientists used her performance as a case study in the limits of human endurance, while motivational speakers shared her story as an example of what could be accomplished when someone refused to accept conventional limitations. Years later, when asked about that remarkable day in the Naval Gymnasium, Sarah would always emphasize the same point. She had not accomplished something impossible. She had simply refused to accept other people's definitions of what was possible. Her background in physical therapy had taught her that the human body was capable of far more than most people believed, and her personal experience had proven that mental determination could unlock physical capabilities that seemed beyond reach. The laughter that had initially greeted her simple question, "Would you mind if I tried?" had been replaced by profound respect and recognition. Sarah Martinez had walked into a gymnasium as a physical therapist and left as a legend. Having demonstrated that the most extraordinary achievements often come from the most unexpected sources, her record still stands today, a testament to the power of believing in yourself when no one else does.